Hello, it's Richard Haggerty here, and I'd like to talk to you about something very interesting, I think, for quitting smoking, which is recently I was chatting with somebody who wanted to stop smoking, and here's what they said. I've tried NRT, that's nicotine replacement therapy. I've tried NRT, e-cigarettes, drugs like Zyban, but nothing worked for more than 3 months. And I thought 3 months, that's pretty good going actually, given that so many people barely last a week or a few days or a couple of weeks. All right. But when you want to quit smoking, when you want to stop smoking now and you want to stay a non-smoker, whether you want to quit vaping, any of these things, it's important to bear in mind that there's some pretty clear research on this. All right. And here's what the research is saying. Now, we'll talk about, and we're going to talk today about very briefly, some of the approaches to stopping smoking. Okay, and it's going to really surprise you. Okay, but here's what the research on stopping smoking says. Smoking cessation without professional help is achieved in 3 to 5% of cases. Okay, what that means is best case scenario, if you want to stop smoking and you do it by yourself, you've got a 1 in 20 chance. Think about that for a minute. When people try smoking cessation without professional help, success is achieved in 3 to 5% of cases. All right? Which means that the majority of time people fail when they try to do it by themselves. Okay, when you try to use willpower, when you try to do it by yourself, the result is basically you don't quit. Okay, and what that does is if you go through that cycle long enough, you start to doubt even your ability to make a change. So let's look at some of the things that people try. What are the things that people try to be able to stop smoking, and then we'll look at those in turn, and we'll look at what that means. Okay, so we've got cold turkey, we've got basically willpower, which is just stopping and doing it. Did you know that is more successful than some of the other things we're going to mention here? And given how the lack of success people have with that, you wonder why anyone even tries to use the other methods. But we've got NRT, that's nicotine replacement therapy. That could be patches, lozenges. We've got drugs like Zyban, Champix, of course, now being removed from the market. Okay, and we have the approaches that work with the unconscious mind. Now, let's look at some of these approaches, and let's look at how well they actually work. Okay, so if you're trying cold turkey or willpower, willpower is a function of the conscious mind. Willpower is what says, okay, I'm going to make myself do this. I'm going to channel attention all the time into making this goal happen. All right, and I've worked with people to overcome fears, phobias, be able to present on stage, be able to stop overeating or eating certain kinds of food, or to get fit and exercise again. How well does willpower work really by itself if that's all you've got? Okay, it's limited because it takes a tremendous amount of effort on your part. Now, we've got nicotine replacement therapy. Okay, so how well does nicotine replacement therapy work? Well, nicotine replacement therapy has a lot of limitations on it. In fact, the success rates are really low. After 4 years, there's a 7% increase in non-smokers, people who manage to stay the distance, relative to the placebo effect. So what that means is, just even the equivalent of the sugar pill versus nicotine replacement therapy, whether it's patches, gums, any of those things, lozenges, all right, after a few years, it goes down to 7% over the placebo effect, just kind of, using your mind a little bit. Okay, so they're really, the nicotine replacement therapy does not have a very, very good success rate. And we'll discover why in just a moment. Okay, so what about drugs? What about things like Champix and Zyban? Well, Champix has been pulled from the market due to health concerns. I mean, the side effects of that were just absolutely off the charts, you know, from the depression to all kinds of awful effects. Zyban has, at best, with support, a 20% success rate over a small period of time. All right. And I don't think that is even, I'm not sure if that 20% is even relative to the placebo effect, because if it's not, then the placebo effect will beat it. Okay. So these drugs, unfortunately, they have, of course, huge side effects. Even with Zyban, things like dizziness and stomach pains, all these kind of things. All right. But they're not getting to the real reason that people smoke. And what's the real reason that people smoke? Look, it's not what you think. Okay, the reason people smoke are because of unfulfilled emotional needs. What's happened is that there's an emotional component to smoking. Think about Maslow in the classic hierarchy of needs. Or, think about it in terms of psychological triggers. We want to feel comfort. We want to feel relaxation. We want to be able to deal with anxiety. We want to feel more calm inside. We want to feel a sense of connection. All right. Did you know that one of the main reasons a lot of people smoke is so that they have it gives them kind of a context and opportunity to have a conversation with their partner. It becomes a ritual that they can share with them. And what that does then is that gets linked to a feeling inside, a feeling of comfort and connection. And of course, if you're feeling a sense of comfort and connection from a habit, you're not going to want to stop it. All right. So that's the real problem, the psychological component. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people will say, "Well, it's an addiction, smoking," and it is an addiction, but there's a psychological element to it and the physiological or physical element. The physical element, the cravings and so forth, is much more minor than people think. In my experience, working over 2 decades with clients, and that will typically can either be non-existent or it can disappear and dissolve very, very quickly with the right support. Okay, and remember, if you try and do it by yourself, 3 to 5% success rate you can expect. But it's the psychological triggers, it's those deeper, unaddressed emotional concerns, the emotional connection, the emotional component, which remember is the subconscious component, that needs to be addressed. Okay, address that, and well, you can have that need met without the need for the old habit, and the old habit dies away and you stop smoking. So it's really important to understand, it's really important to be very, very clear on this, that the reason that people carry on smoking is because of unfulfilled emotional needs. And the reason that they have, shall we say, a lack of awareness about this is because the dominant model from marketing is the medical model. It's the model that says, hey, smoking is a chronic disorder. Okay, it's a chronic disorder of tobacco dependence. And so then they'll look at drugs and they'll look at genetics and looking at all these kinds of things instead of looking at the fundamental, deeper, emotional, psychological component that once it's addressed, you can stop smoking, you can quit smoking, you can stop smoking today. All right, so it's really important to know that if you don't do anything, if you just carry on by yourself, you've got that 3 to 5% chance of quitting, okay? And that's not even long term. You've got all those other kind of things that you can do. You can buy in shops, which are very, very weak chances of success, like 7% over time, all right? We know that there are things that work, okay, that don't have side effects, okay? So when you find someone to work with, talk to them about this, talk about the support that they give you so that you can have a tailored plan to be able to transform. And that's exactly what I do with my clients, because it's important to know that when it's tailored for you, you can quit smoking and stop smoking for good.